About Chapter 1, Knowledge. Our author, Simon Blackburn, has decided to use the great philosopher Descartes as his prime example of a philosopher asking some very basic questions about the nature and really about the possibility of knowledge, I would say, really, rather than the nature of knowledge, really the possibility of knowledge. And Descartes is a incredibly important figure in the history of philosophy, and it would be very difficult actually to imagine the history of philosophy without Descartes. But it's maybe not, in other ways, maybe not the best choice, because once we begin to reconstruct what Descartes actually did in the Meditations, the work that is referenced here, the difficulties seem to pile up on one another very quickly. And one wonders, really why Blackburn chose Descartes as being his paradigm example for a philosopher searching into the possibility of knowledge, because he begins to criticize him so quickly. And I think it's important for us to read and understand Blackburn's criticisms of Descartes, and then he cites other philosophers' difficulties or criticisms of Descartes. But I think it's important to also give Descartes his hearing and remind ourselves what Descartes at least thought he was up to, and maybe think about what motivated what Descartes did. I mean, we're all familiar with the very famous cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, and we've all heard it, and maybe this is the first time perhaps we've seen that motto in context. It's fairly easy to misunderstand what he meant without anything anybody meant without actually seeing why they said it or what prompted them to say it, and that notion that if I am thinking, and I know that I'm thinking, then I must exist. I mean, why would you bother to point that out? Well, let's go back to the beginning. What was Descartes up to, and what motivated him? I think one of the things that Blackburn kind of leaves out is, what that motivation. What was Descartes up to? Well, Descartes wanted to know if he knew anything. The way he tells it in the Meditations is that he reached a certain age, and he didn't think he was brilliant. He was brilliant, but he didn't claim to be brilliant. But he knew he wasn't stupid, and he had gotten what, at least at that time, passed for a very good education, and it was a very good education. It was not a modern education because he lived in the 17th century. But at a certain point in his life, he realized that there were all sorts of things that he thought that he knew, but he wasn't really sure why he thought he knew them or what his grounds were, and that is the experience, I think, that Blackburn is trying to focus on to begin with, is that all of us have had that experience. Maybe not that experience of maybe suspecting that everything in our lives is a dream, or that we live in some kind of virtual reality, which I don't really think is a thought that most of us have most of the time. But that thought that, do I really know what I'm talking about? That's what really motivated Descartes, is that he wasn't sure if he knew what he was talking about. And he knew, as all of us do when we reach a certain age, that plenty of things that we thought we knew, some of them which we were sure that we knew, turned out to be wrong. And that leads to a sort of corrosive thinking. I mean, not corrosive thinking, but a skeptical thinking about everything we know. Well, if we could be wrong then, and certainly we have been wrong, and we can imagine that we're wrong about some things now, then are we right about anything? And how would we know whether we're right about anything? And that may seem an insoluble problem, and it probably is, but Descartes thought he had a method for dealing with it. It was pretty radical, and that was the method of doubt that's described in this chapter. Descartes says, well, there's all sorts of things of different kinds that I think I know. I think I know sort of just everyday, sort of common sense things about my environment, about the world, about myself. There's things I think I know about mathematics and science and other other fields of knowledge. How do I sort through these things to figure out, which of my opinions or beliefs are true and which are false? Descartes' idea was that, well, I mean, if he said he would do this. He said, if there's anything that is doubtful about anything that I know, then I'll put it aside. That is, I can't say that I know that I don't know it, or that I know that it's false, but if I'm able to doubt anything, I will suspend my belief in it. I will, again, not think that I know that it's false, but I will know that it's untrustworthy, that I don't know that I know it, and I'll put it aside, and I won't believe that I know it anymore. Anything that can be doubted. Now, given the vast sort of range and different kinds of things that we think we know, some things are more easily doubted than others. And the things that Descartes starts with are the things that we know through the senses, which is a sort of a topic that will come up again and again. Whether we can trust anything that we get through our senses. That is, anything. I mean, I rely upon my senses for my knowledge of my environment, for the different things that I think are around me, and I know that there are certain, once I begin to reflect, as we'll see, there's certain complications involved in saying that I know anything through my senses. Certainly I know that I'm wrong sometimes, that my senses deceive me, and that's a big issue with Descartes. So Descartes says, well, if my senses sometimes deceive me, or if I'm not sure, but can't be absolutely sure that I know anything through my senses, then I can certainly doubt anything that I know through my senses. So we throw that away, and he comes to more difficult, things about the world that are, things about the world that are more difficult to doubt. That is, we may be wrong about our particular beliefs about physical objects, but can we be wrong that there are physical objects? We can be wrong. We can have doubts about the nature of the universe, how it's made and what it consists of. But can we doubt that there is a world or a universe in general? We can doubt certain things in mathematics, say a complicated mathematics problem. We can doubt that our answer is correct, but can we doubt the basics of mathematics, that a triangle has that its angles equal 2 right angles, or that 1 + 1 = 2, and things like that. And that's where this idea of the evil demon comes in. That is, it may be difficult to doubt that 1 + 1 = 2, or that I'm right about that. But what if there was an evil demon, this is an evil godlike demon who had the power to deceive me? Couldn't I doubt anything? That there is a world, that any of the truths of mathematics are really true, or that I can really know them? Descartes is trying to push it, really, and he has an agenda here. He's really trying to push it to see if there's anything that is undoubtable or indubitable. Because if there is anything that's undoubtable, that is, if there's anything that I find that I am incapable of doubting, that cannot be doubted, then that must be true, that must be reliable. So he pushes it as far as he can, and gets himself to the point where he seems to have thrown everything, even the most obvious things about the world and about conceptual things like logic and mathematics, and seems to have put them aside, said that they're capable of being doubted. If we go on this hypothesis of an evil demon that is deceiving me about everything. But then he arrives at the cogito ergo sum, that is, what is the one thing that he cannot doubt? He finds it. He says, I cannot doubt that I am thinking. Even if I am deceived about my knowledge of everything else, even if it turns out that my beliefs about everything else turn out to be erroneous, that I'm being deceived, that I am engaging in an error, but I'm thinking. That is, being deceived, that is, thinking something that is erroneous, is a form of thinking. So I cannot doubt that I am thinking, even being deceived is a kind of thinking, and therefore that I, at least as a thinking thing, at least as a thinker, must exist. So the I think, or as Blackburn says, maybe we should change it a little bit from I think to I am thinking, therefore I exist, is the one thing I cannot doubt, or maybe the two things I cannot doubt. I cannot doubt I am thinking, because even doubting implies that I am thinking. And if I'm thinking, I must exist. That is, someone or something must be having a thought. So I don't know how good a reconstruction that is. I mean, certainly we have the reconstruction in the book, but I think that I kind of wanted to supplement a little bit. The motivation here is for Descartes to find out if he really knows anything for sure. And the idea is that if there's anything that is indubitable, if there's anything he thinks that he knows, that he finds that he cannot subject to doubt, that cannot be doubted, then that thing must be true, and what he arrives at is his own existence as a thinking thing. I am thinking, therefore I exist. That is the one thing he cannot doubt. Now, at that point, then we begin to look at Blackburn's criticisms, and he really, if you look at the chapter, he's really criticizing Descartes on two levels. First, about the question is really a methodological one, and by that I mean a criticism of what Descartes is actually doing in terms of the method of doubt. Can you really doubt everything? And do you really have good reasons for doubting the things that you say you're doubting? Secondly, the criticism of where Descartes goes once he arrives at the I know for sure that I'm thinking. The question is whether he can move on from that. Descartes certainly thinks he can move on from that. That is, the final conclusion of Descartes' meditations is not that the only thing I can know is that I am thinking and that I exist. No, he's more ambitious than that, and wants to recover much of what he thought he knew before he began doubting. And Blackburn criticizes him, and other philosophers in the history of philosophy have criticized Descartes for that. That is, whether you can really move on from that.